Upon a small estate, there were several neighbours very unhappy because of one neighbour. One neighbour would be reported to be making lots of noise. Most of the noise was associated to ambulances and police turning up at different hours of the day, most of the time late at night and early hours of the morning. The man who lived next door to this noisy neighbour was very upset. He had sleepless nights. He felt worried about what would happen if his children would stay because of the ambulance and the police turning up. He was worried about what was going on inside that property. Several times he tried to speak to the noisy neighbour. He tried to ask him to be quiet, and it would usually end up in an argument. They both would get quite heated and they would both shout at one another. The neighbour would call us. He would call us and he would tell us what was going on. But unfortunately, we were not getting any kind of noise recordings. We were not getting any evidence of what this disturbance was, even though we'd tried to work with the neighbour to try and find ways that were best to help him report to us. As the noise continued, all the neighbours around this noisy neighbour would talk to one another and complain to one another, and they would all individually call in, explaining that they were fed up with the noise that was going on, fed up with the ambulances turning up most nights, fed up with the police turning up. They were scared. One day, the noisy neighbour heard music playing in the house next door. This was during the night. He couldn't sleep, so he went to knock on his neighbour's door to ask him to turn the noise down. When he was at the door, the neighbour put on some clothes and came back out, and the pair ended up in a fight. The neighbour contacted the police, and the police came to do their investigations. The noisy neighbour was arrested and he was released with bail terms to stay away from his next door neighbour and not to interact with his next door neighbour in any way. The noisy neighbour, he was concerned. He was worried. What do I do? How can I not go near my next door neighbour when he lives next door? I have to walk past his house every day. What happens when my son comes to stay with me at the weekends? What if my neighbour starts on me again? I don't know what to do. I've got rent arrears. I can't work. I don't know what to do. The noisy neighbour was very upset one day and called in to Stonewater. He was very emotional on the phone. He was angry. He was angry because he didn't know what to do. He said he can't stay away from his neighbour because he lives right next door. He said he can't stay away from his neighbour because he has to walk past his door each time he leaves the property. He said, I can't stay away from my neighbour when my son comes to stay. I have to walk past his door when my son stays with me. I am worried, he said. I am worried that when my son stays with me, my neighbour will start on me again. The noisy neighbour said, It was not me. It was not me. It was my neighbour. I went to ask him to turn his music down and he just started. He threw himself at me. And then the police came and I was the one who got arrested. I'm the one who's supposed to be in trouble, but I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know what to do. I might as well end it all now. While talking to the customer on the phone, I let him tell me about why he was angry. I let him tell me what was making him feel upset. He explained that he can only see his son at weekends because he was previously reported to be in an abusive relationship. But when it went to court, it was proved that his ex-partner was not telling the truth. she was an alcoholic, and when she was drunk, she would accuse him of being violent. Since then, his son is staying with his auntie through the week and then stays with him for 2 days at the weekends. The noisy neighbour explained that he can't cope during the week when he doesn't have his son. He can't cope, so he has to drink to try and get through the days. He says he struggles when he drinks because all his emotions get worse, and that he wants to just end his life, because he sees no way of things getting better. While talking to the noisy neighbour, I explained to him why he is best to not drink. I explained that by drinking, he's making himself very vulnerable. I advised that I was aware from the police that he calls them on a regular occasion. I advised that I am aware that he is feeling very sad a lot of the time. He told me that he does go to the local bridge where he gets to the point where he feels he needs to jump and just end it. He advised he's done that many times, but he doesn't want to do that. He advised that he just needs help. He advised that the reason why his son is not with him during the week is because he was given a choice in court to stay with his dad or to stay with another family member. Because his auntie lives near the school where his friends also live nearby, he wanted to live near his friends. So he chose to live with his auntie for most of the week and then visit his dad at the weekends. His son is only 6 years old. This, the noisy neighbour advised, broke his heart, and he doesn't know how to change things for the better. He said he's stuck in arrears. He said he's stuck in a place where his neighbours are all against him. He said, whenever I walk outside my house, they all stare at me and they all watch me as I walk back in. The noisy neighbour said, I just need help. I advised him that there are people who can help. I advised him that we can give him a referral to the Kaleidoscope group. They can offer one-to-one counselling over the phone. The noisy neighbour said he's done counselling before and it's not for him. He hates being in groups. He's a proud man, he said. He said, look, I'm old school. I'm a traditional Scottish man. I'm proud. I don't want to sit with other people. I advised him that during COVID, Kaleidoscope do one-to-one support over the telephone, and they can do up to 6 sessions. The noisy neighbour said I could do that, so he agreed to me making him a referral. I also advised that he does best stay away from speaking to his neighbour, and I also advised that if he needed any other assistance with his rental arrears, then perhaps I could get the income officer to give him a call. He agreed that would be a good idea. He advised he was struggling for work because he used to work for Amazon, night shifts, and he would sleep through the day and be out at work during the night. He advised the last few months he hasn't been able to work for Amazon, but he wants to do so again. I advised that he's best taking things step by step and to start with his one-to-one counselling with Kaleidoscope. The next time I spoke to the noisy neighbour, he advised that he had heard from Kaleidoscope and he was taking on their one-to-one sessions. He advised that he's also managed to get a new start at Amazon again, and he was due to start work within the next week. Noisy neighbour sounded so much happier on the phone. He even advised that he hadn't had a drink for a few days and he was feeling a lot better. But he was still feeling very upset about the incident that happened with the neighbour next door. I advised that the matter is with the police, and if everything happened as he said it happened, then that will be evidenced in court. I advised to best stay away and not speak to his neighbour. He agreed. Since the noisy neighbour has been speaking to Kaleidoscope, since he's been working back on night shifts and sleeping in the day, we have received no further complaints from the neighbours of noise, of ambulances or police turning up at the property. Everything has been quiet. We touch base with the police to see how things have been going with them, to see if they've been receiving any further reports of noise or incidents in the area relating to the noisy neighbour. We also asked if they've been receiving any more 999 emergency calls. The police advised that this had stopped. This had stopped for the past month, and this tied in with the time that the noisy neighbour was engaging with Kaleidoscope. This was positive news. They were very pleased to hear that things looked like they were progressing in a positive light for the noisy neighbour. Noisy neighbour is no longer a noisy neighbour. It's good news to hear that the police are happy. There's no further reports being called into them. It's good to hear and see that we're getting no further reports from the other neighbours. And it's good to hear and see that the noisy neighbour had engaged with counselling service and started back up working. Overall, this was a success. There is still a court hearing due, and the neighbour is aware that he is on a formal warning. But with the engagement in place, the listening and the understanding, we have managed to get a positive result without having to take any formal action. Overall, a great success for everyone.